Welcome to False Dichotomies. I am Cy Pastels. I am Daria Quinn, and today we're talking about a R.E.M. album called Up, which is not necessarily their best known album, but I think it's a really good one.
Okay.
So, Daria, um, before we get into it, I kind of wanted to ask you, was there any particular song or songs that stuck out to you in this one?
Walk Unafraid.
Me too. Yeah.
Walk Unafraid.
That's like one of my favorite songs
Yeah.
on the album, and it's like it really speaks to, in my opinion, I think it alludes very strongly to the LGBT perspective.
Right.
So, was there anything else?
I also liked You're in the Air.
Really? So that's one of the songs that I'm like, I've been listening to this album for a couple months now, and I take a while to really put music into my head, but that's one that I haven't quite been able to grasp in terms of like its meaning. But I'd love to hear more about what you think about it.
Well, I have I kind of have like a tepid relationship with R.E.M.
Yeah.
as a band. I was exposed to them around 10 or 11 years old, and this is when Shiny Happy People was out. This was when Losing My Religion, and of course then it transitioned into Everybody Hurts. So these are the songs that I'm exposed to for my first exposure to R.E.M., which is this overly ironic, possibly sarcastic, happy song.
Yeah.
This completely unconventional song with a mandolin.
Yeah.
With symbolism that I wouldn't recognize until adulthood.
Yeah.
And a song that kind of sounded a bit whiny.
Yeah, and I think that's like rather when there's a band that's really smart and intellectual and subtle and complex, they're the singles that end up actually getting radio play are the ones that are the most
annoying,
or the most simplistic or the most like whack you over the head with a sledgehammer with what it means kind of songs.
Yeah. And you gotta remember too, I'm 11 at this point. R.E.M. is not, I feel R.E.M. is not meant to be digested by children. They are not going to understand it. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't listen to it. It just means they're not going to get it. It's going to go over their head.
Oh yeah, and that's like I definitely agree with that because my first exposure to R.E.M. was as a very small child because my dad was a fan. I don't know if he would consider himself a fan, but it was definitely one of the bands that he played most often. When he was making dinner. That was like the main thing was after my dad got home from work, he would start making dinner and he would put on an album. So like that was my exposure to a lot of the best music because my dad is a professional musician himself. He's got very good taste in music, so that was my introduction to it. And of course, like to me, the ultimate like kid-friendly R.E.M. song is "Stand" because it's got like things you could do with your body, and you were like, I'm doing the thing that the song is telling me to do. I'm standing in the place where I live.
It's the hokey pokey.
It's hokey pokey, but for hipsters. And that song itself is like really got an almost like meditative quality to it. It's like it's ground yourself in what you can experience directly. Right. And that's something that a child can grasp really intuitively, but an adult needs kind of reminders for.
Yeah. So those are the three songs that kind of introduced me to R.E.M. Yeah. So I didn't really like R.E.M. when I was young. This is pre-death of Kurt Cobain, when I was just starting to kind of get into music that was, not made in the 60s. My dad, being the religious person that he was, did not want me listening to modern music, so he felt that the Doors and Zeppelin and songs about oral sex disguised as bubblegum and 96 Tears, which was supposed to be 69 Tears because we're not stupid, the sort of, and the Rolling Stones, of course. So I could listen to all of that. But, how dare I listen to The Cure or Queen,
Oh,
So, and I started off on a bad foot too, because it's like when I started listening to like music that wasn't oldies, it was Sting and Rod Stewart and and Meatloaf. It was the adult contemporary channel. So I was the kid that liked John Mellencamp in 7th grade.
I mean, I don't blame you. He's actually not that bad.
But this is 1993,
Right.
so I am very alienated from what is going on in the pop culture world until Kurt Cobain dies. And then that changes. That changes because I discovered the Smashing Pumpkins, and the flood of post-Nirvana made Nirvana somewhat unavoidable. So it's like the Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana, then Weezer, and that's just, the Green Day and Soundgarden and all of these like heavier alternative bands, Stone Temple Pilots. And then, there's R.E.M. off to the side that gets played on the same station, but it doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it doesn't really slot easily into any particular genre.
Yeah. So I'm this kid in 1993, 1994 that is getting into alternative radio and seeing sort of two sides of alternative radio, which is the mainstream Nirvana, Soundgarden stuff. There's the Cure, and there's R.E.M., and there's Pixies, and that sort of other, there was a band in my head I can't think of right now that perfectly, the Cranberries.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It sort of encompasses that. It's like they all got. Hootie and the Blowfish used to get played on alternative radio. Okay, so in the early to mid 90s, alternative radio was whatever they could throw on the station and not get yelled at.
Everything's alternative to something.
So it's like it's almost like I had been trained because of how I introduced myself to R.E.M. to not like R.E.M. And then Monster happens.
Right. You mentioned Monster last time.
Yeah, we talked. Yeah. We talk a lot off mic.
And yeah, this is not the only interaction we have, by the way.
So I in that conversation I had brought up that I feel like Monster is the R.E.M. album for people who don't like R.E.M.
I'm not sure I agree with that necessarily, but I've never not liked R.E.M., so I don't know.
Yeah. So it's like, what's the frequency Kenneth comes out, and I'm like, wait, is this the same band? And of course, I would learn years later on that Monster was recorded as an attempt to try to reach out to Kurt Cobain when he was in his deep depression. It's like, hey, I got this project, come work on it with us.
Oh, wow.
And then Kurt dies, and they're like, well, we're already doing this, so let's finish it.
That is a fascinating story. I haven't heard that.
Yeah, I'm probably misrecollecting it too. It's like, this is stuff that I remember seeing on like VH1, behind the music kind of stuff from like 10, 15 years ago. So I might not be correct on that, but I do believe that Monster came out of an attempt to collaborate with Kurt Cobain.
That does not surprise me, knowing what little I know about the personal lives of the band members, because they really do like, and the music itself kind of radiates a tenderness and a wanting to like reach out, and especially to people who are suffering.
And so it's like, with the context of Monster, I was able to get into the band. And after I got into the band, I was able to go back and appreciate songs like Losing My Religion. Yeah. Of course, that also comes with growing up and just kind of gaining a better understanding of the world and learning that Losing My Religion is apparently a colloquialism for a breakup.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something like Michael Stipe, I think, mentioned that in an interview I saw recently on YouTube. I might have to search that up and send it to you. So yeah, Up was actually the first album I ever listened to from R.E.M. that hadn't come from my dad's collection. Mm-hmm. So I don't even know if he ever owned it or listened to it himself. And it is a little bit later in their career compared to like the ones that I was listening to as a kid. But yeah, I remember finding it. I was like, oh wow, this is an R.E.M. Album. I literally found it in a record store for the price is on it, $2 it was for clearance, and I was like, oh look, an R.E.M. album I haven't heard before. So I gave it a listen. And I was like, oh, I think this might be my favorite. I'm not sure if it's my favorite yet, but it might be. I don't know. So should we go through song by song and see what we have to
see
say?
how this unfolds.
So the first song was Airport Man.
Yes.
It's really like a very long, almost droning. Like the lyrics are very indistinct. It's like it doesn't seem to want much attention, even considering how long it is.
To me, it felt like U2's Numb. In that sort of, there's that droning, understated thing going on.
It's not something you expect an album to start with.
Yeah. Usually it's something that an album ends with.
Yeah. It's like, I can't even, for the life of me, remember any of the lyrics, although I know there are lyrics. It's like, yeah, I'm looking at the lyrics in the liner notes, and I can't even place where they are in the song. That's how indistinct they are. So
it sort of has like the structure of U2's Numb, and it has sort of the sound of Radiohead's No Surprises, or at least that's how it came off to me. In fact, something that I will be repeating many times as we speak is that this album reminds me of OK Computer.
You know what? I don't think I'd have made that comparison, but I buy it. Yeah, makes sense.
To me, it sounds like R.E.M. had listened to OK Computer and they're like, wow, this is cool. And that was in their minds while they were recording this album. Not as like for the same reason that Nirvana was probably on their brain when they were putting together Monster.
Yeah, it's not like a copycat thing. It's
this is what we're listening to right now, and it's going to influence us.
Artists always influence each other. Yeah. I tried to think of something to say about Airport Man, and I was like, I'm not sure if I can say much about it. Other than that, there's not much that I can say about it.
It is a prolonged intro song. Usually a song like this would be like maybe a minute long.
Yeah, that's the other thing I kept thinking. Like, there's a lot of albums I could name that begin with something that's just very atmospheric, and it's just a whole lot of songs, and it's not really a full song. But it's like 30 seconds to a minute, and then they go into the first actual song.
Right.
Whereas this one is, let me just double check. It is 4 minutes and 13 seconds, which is longer than your average pop song. I think like a pop song is supposed to be like about 3 minutes in order to hold someone's attention. It's not like an 8-minute song, but it's certainly up there. So the next song is Lotus.
When I first heard Lotus, I really didn't like it. Like, there was something about it that just wasn't connecting for me. And I don't know whether it was the vocal, the hi, just
it's like it's not. It's a little bit like R.E.M. trying too hard to be metal,
which is not working because the song.
It doesn't work.
Well, not only that, but the song is completely not suited for it.
Yeah.
It felt like, to me, it felt like R.E.M. was trying to be U2. And it just wasn't working for me. But the weird thing is that was my initial impression of it. As I've put the album on repeat and listened to it repeatedly, Lotus is the song that's kind of stuck in my brain. Yeah. As much as I don't like it, there's hooks.
Yeah.
Like in my head, there'll just be the random "I am the Lotus" popping up. So it's like
I ate the lotus.
Okay.
It's just like, so happy to show us. I ate the lotus. Haven't you noticed? I ate the lotus. It's like it is a little bit catchy in an infuriating way. It's like, why are you saying these words at me? They don't even make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what my reaction was. It's like I don't know if I disliked it, but I was like along the same lines as Airport Man. I just didn't really have much to think about it.
Hmm.
And then like over time I realized, why is this the song that's stuck in my head right now?
Yeah. That's absolutely the way I was feeling too. And the weird thing about it was, okay, so I have Spotify, but I don't pay for it. So when I'm on the mobile phone and I'm out and I have REM, when I put REMs up on repeat, I don't get just REMs up. I get a mix of the entire discography
Oh,
because
interesting.
Spotify is kind of an asshole like that, and it's only on the mobile app too. If you listen to it on your laptop or your game system or whatever, you can pick whatever song you want, whatever. All you get is ads. On the mobile app, you are at the mobile app's mercy. It will play what it wants to play.
See,
And so I'm getting tracks from Up interspersed with REM songs I'm more familiar with. So I'm kind of forced into a comparison mode.
yeah, that's interesting. I I yeah, this is why one of the reasons why I very much prefer CDs. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, there's a lot of hate for CDs as a medium. It's what I'm most familiar with, and it's what's most convenient for me. And the fact that there are laptops being sold these days without disk drives just drives me mad.
Yeah, I have one of those, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
I look. Does it have? And
Mhm.
here's how old fashioned I am.
Mhm.
When I'm looking for a laptop, I look for a CD drive or a CD DVD drive, and I look for the number pad on the keyboard on the
Right.
side. And I see you have one of those
Yes.
too, so good for
So
you.
so at least I got that going for me.
Yes.
But yeah, it's um the reason I don't do CD it isn't necessarily that I don't do it at home. It's that I have never had a CD player that didn't skip to death with like every step I took. And my primary listening to music a lot of the time is when I'm out.
Yeah.
It is one of my coping mechanisms. I have a hard time leaving my home. So when I do, I'm going grocery shopping or I'm going to a doctor's appointment or whatever, and I'm going to be on the bus. So I just put some headphones in, put on Spotify, and
See, that's why I take my
yeah,
CDs and I rip them onto my computer, and then I put them
in
from the
and
computer onto
into
my
it.
phone.
Yeah, I have to figure out how much memory my phone has,
Yeah.
and I need to see about a memory card because Spotify is nice, and it's like when I set up my own playlists, they'll stick to the playlist for the most part, but you have to have like 100 tracks,
Mhm.
which is really easy for me because my liked music is almost 3,000.
I might have a micro SD card to loan you. I can check.
But I have to see if it's even compatible with my
Yeah,
phone too. So.
most smartphones these days have a spot for a micro SD card. But well, we can talk about that later.
Right.
So after Lotus comes Suspicion, and this is a song that like I didn't really have much thoughts about until like just yesterday when I was writing notes for this episode, and I realized a potential interpretation of this song that is very disturbing.
Okay.
But before I get into that, did you have any ideas about what it meant?
It didn't really give me much of an impression. I have no notes to speak of, and
Where I'm thinking is he's talking about not wanting to think and not wanting anything too deep. Don't talk. Let imagination drive. So this is someone who is willfully denying reality
Mhm.
in order to like surround himself with a imaginary version of something that is preferable. And that's something that I am very familiar with. Is that like realizing something is not quite right, but not wanting to like say anything about it or not wanting to think too hard about it. So you just try to pretend that it's not real. The other thing that stuck out to me, listen to the devil's in my ear. Tell me what I want to hear. You're so funny. You're so fine. You're so perfect. You're so mine. Then I never had an opportunity to hide. So what his imagination is telling him, these devils in his ear, is that the person that he's like talking to in his mind is funny and fine and perfect and mine. Which led me to the conclusion, maybe this song is about fooling yourself into thinking that someone really likes you and is into you when really they're not. So this could be a stalker. This could be a rapist.
It could go that dark, or it could just be someone, say her name is Daria, who has a lack of social skills and doesn't know how to differentiate flirting from not flirting because, well, one, if anyone has ever overtly flirted with her, they've done so in a way that Daria would never have noticed. Or two, I can attach to people with basically nothing, and that attachment can be very strong. And it's sort of a favorite person thing. And it's not healthy.
No.
But, you know,
it's you can't stop yourself from feeling those feelings, though.
You can work your ass off to try. Yeah. And that's something I've been doing.
That's another thing I've been known to try as well.
Is like, those emotions are only going to take you down a bad path, especially since it almost always goes wrong. And me, I'm one of these people that is like, well, I'm really good at cutting people out of my life completely. And how I do that is I tend to make them hate. To the point where it's like they wish, it's like they would, it's like they're glad to be rid of me so I don't have to be around them anymore. And again, not healthy.
No, that's not healthy.
But at the same time, I can't be around these people anymore because it's only damaging me.
Maybe transitioning to a method of dealing with these problems, which is more like openly drawing boundaries and just hoping that they respect that.
Well, that's life experience.
This is advanced interpersonal skills, right?
Yeah, this is typical Daria in counseling sessions. I would imagine that's not a surprise to anyone listening that Daria is in counseling, and not just because I'm trans or a potential supervillain.
Yeah, the supervillainy thing is something that I'm gonna have to keep an eye out for. Not necessarily so I can stop you, but so that maybe I can like get on your good side before things go down.
Well, I just to let you know now, if I am ever successful in taking over the world, first of all, I'm going to fix Pinky, and second, you're pretty safe. The LGBT community in general will be relatively safe, or at least as safe as I can make them. Mm-hmm. It's straight people that are going to have to worry.
Yes, poor straights. I don't understand why.
Spoken like a true Magneto. So anyway, we were talking about R.E.M.
Yeah. So that was Suspicion. Like I said, I'm still kind of in the process of formulating my personal interpretation of this song, but yeah, it's taken me down some dark roads in my head. And a lot of the songs on this album do that. And yet I think more often they go down into the darkness and then they end up somewhere even better. Mm-hmm. And that's especially true of the next song on the album, which is Hope. Yeah. Which is like It's exactly what it's about. It's hope. But it's also like it's not an unambiguously positive song.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Hope and it's about hope, but it describes a lot of situations that are very ambiguous and uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you have any thoughts about it?
Very, very similar thoughts on that and I think it's a thematic thing over this whole record, is that I feel that the name of the album is meant to be ironic.
Maybe.
There is at least a tendency for positivity in these songs, but they are presented in such a way that they don't come off that way when you first hear them.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like being on Valium. I think Valium would probably be the best term, but yeah, some people take Prozac. I am obviously on neither of these, but it's sort of that emotional balance. Whereas Monster was very manic, and New Adventures in Hi-Fi was very subdued. The Up is sort of the middle ground, or closer to a middle ground.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that like it does a really good job of like blunting the negative side of things and emphasizing the positive side of things. But like there's a couple of bits in Hope. Hope has like the most lyrics, I think, of most of the songs on this. It's very word dense.
Well, between Michael Stipe and Leonard Cohen, you're going to have some more density.
Yes. But one of my favorite verses in this one, it goes, "You want to trust the doctors, their procedure is the best. But the last try was a failure, and the intern was a mess. And they did the same to Matthew, and he bled till Sunday night. They're saying don't be frightened, but you're weakened by the sight of it." And yeah, as for anyone who's like undergone any sort of like invasive medical procedure, it's like there's this extreme tension where it's like even if you know that the chance of failure is very slim, even if you know that it's your best hope of recovery, going in for something like that, you can't help but think about that small sliver of a chance of things getting much worse. Yeah. And maybe you have a friend like Matthew who bled till Sunday night. And maybe you do have your doubts about the competence of the people doing it, but you also have to trust that you're in the best hands that you could possibly be in. And yeah, as I've gone into surgery myself last year, and I knew that it was a very routine thing, and that I had one of the most competent surgeons in the area, possibly the country. And I knew that I was in good hands, but that doesn't mean that I didn't have like massive fears that about somebody like cutting into my body when I was unconscious. Yeah. And knowing so many stories of like the same procedure going horribly wrong.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's that one hit close to home.
Yeah, there are few things more frightening to a trans person than hearing a fellow trans person's nightmare story about a transition gone bad. Yeah. And that is one of the things that, I'm in a lot of trans-based Facebook groups because I know trans people in my life, but I can count them on both hands. Which is an extreme improvement over, say, about 5 years ago when I knew me, and that was about it.
Yeah, it's good. Improvement is good.
But yeah, it's like the one story I always dread seeing is is the complication from from certain procedures. In fact, one of the first people that I connected with on Facebook who was trans had to fly back to Texas repeatedly in order to have corrections done to one of his procedures because of all the complications he was having. It's part of the reason why I have put the brakes on any sort of medical procedure for myself because I am at a point right now where I do not feel that the rewards outweigh the risks. There are things that I'm not prepared to lose, even if they're not necessarily the most feminine things.
Yeah.
It's like, I would love to get rid of all this excess body hair, but that's not going to happen because electrolysis is not covered by Medicaid or Medicare. And hormones aren't going to fix that, but hormones might fuck up a whole hell of a lot else for me. And I guess I'm just going to have to shave.
Yeah, it's a really hard thing, and especially with transitioning things. Like if you have bad results from a transitioning procedure, or if you're having second thoughts about it afterward, or if you even just have post-op depression, which I had, which is normal. It is like so normal.
It is one of the things they talk to you about.
Yeah, you can't like our body. We did not evolve to have like the possibility of having someone put you unconscious and then cut your body open and radically change it, no matter what the reason.
Right.
Surgery is a really recent invention in the history of humanity. And when you wake up from that, your brain subconsciously is pretty sure that you were just mortally wounded. And it's really hard to like balance your emotions after that. Yeah. It took me months to recover. And
it can take people a lot longer than that in some cases.
Yeah, and if you were already depressed, it can be really hard to be like, okay, so there was a long time this past like fall, several months after my surgery, when I was like, okay, so is this still post-op depression, or am I just back to my regular old depression? Because you can't necessarily tell.
Yeah, the downside of depression.
Yeah.
As if we needed more.
The upside is, of course, the amazing jokes.
Yeah, we gotta laugh at some.
Yeah. So the other verse that really stuck out for me in this song is you want to trust religion and you know it's allegory, but the people who are followers have written their own story. And you look up to the heavens and you hope that it's a spaceship and it's something from your childhood. You're thinking, don't be frightened. It starts out with like a statement about religion, and then it starts to be about spaceships and childhood. And but the lines about, you know it's allegory, but the people have written their own story. It's like, and that really speaks to my experience of religion, because it's like when I really experience religion as something real and meaningful to me, it is always like this transcendent, allegorical, mythological thing where it's like I can reconcile it with science because it is just another way of viewing the same reality that science describes to us. Whereas so many people in so many places of power in our society are insisting that, no, you can't reconcile religion with science. You have to pick one. And if you believe in religion, you have to believe this literal interpretation of it. It almost makes it so that when I'm among religious people, I'm never sure whether I am included amongst them or not, because they might think that because I don't believe exactly what they believe, that I am an atheist and apostate and an unbeliever. Or they might be like, yeah, we differ on the details, but we really do believe in the same basic concepts, and I never know what to expect.
I feel like this is a conversation we will dive into more when we cover Dogma.
Yes.
Which is upcoming, so mark that on your calendars. We're looking at about a month away on that one?
We'll figure out the exact date later, I think.
All right. But that is...
Mark your calendar for the next several months, I guess.
Just mark your calendars anyway, because we're going to be here.
Yes.
We'll get into this deeper with the Dogma episode, but I am a big believer in the power of myth. That as you were saying, that sort of reconciliation of science and religion. I don't know if I really believe in God as a being. I think the easiest way to explain my belief right now is, so Star Wars Episode 1, this thing that everybody hated about, well, okay, there are tons of things people hated about Episode 1, but one really important thing was the nature of the Force.
Okay.
Metachlorians. So many fanboys lost their minds over metachlorians because it supposedly took away the magic of the Force. Now, for people who don't know, metachlorians are microscopic beings that live in symbiosis with the living creatures of the world around them. And the Force is the ability to manipulate and control those microbiotic creatures to do things like lifting rocks with your thoughts or whatever else. So it's no longer mystical and magic. There's a science to it. You took away the magic. And here I am thinking, you quantified the magic. You've quantified, okay, like you're in a Final Fantasy game, okay? And you have a health bar and you have a magic bar. And that's your magic energy. And you have to keep filling it up, or it depletes every time you do a spell or whatever else. Okay, that's what metachlorians are. They're your magic bar. Okay? And
explaining the power of myth through Star Wars and Final Fantasy.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I feel like we all have a magic bar.
Okay.
And what we can do is quantify it. Whatever, magic or science or however you want to see it, it's quantifiable. There is a measure to it. We may not know the measure. We may not know whether, drinking ether or Gatorade or whatever else will refill our magic meter.
I think Magic Bar is my new nickname for my penis. By the way.
And that's not a bad one. But it's sort of like that. Like wow. I just remember people being so angry about metachlorians and it's ruining the myth and ruining their childhood. And I'm just thinking, you probably play Final Fantasy games and you have no problem with there being a limited quantifiable amount of magic that your character can use before you have to take a potion or whatever to fill it back up. You can be okay with that. That doesn't ruin the concept of magic or mysticism to you. But finding out that it might be caused by a symbiotic relationship between you and microscopic organisms that live inside of you,
which is like a really amazing concept on its own. Yeah, the idea of having like tiny creatures inside of you and that's why I kind of wanted to bring up the concept that may have been the inspiration for midichlorians, and that is mitochondria, which are little organelles inside of our cells, which, if you remember from middle school biology, they are the powerhouse of the cell.
Yes.
And they have their own DNA. They are not part of our bodies. They are living creatures that live inside of our cells. And they provide a lot of our energy that we use to make things happen with our bodies, to move and talk and think. And the fact that we have that energy because of a symbiotic relationship with a creature that is so tiny that it lives inside of our cells, not in our bloodstream, in our cells.
Yeah.
It's that is mind-blowing to me. It's it turns your body into a colony of millions of creatures working together, and that is amazing, isn't it?
And that sort of thing is, there is so much magic that you can see in science.
Absolutely.
And so much science that you could apply to magic. I feel I'm in a bit of a transitional part of my life as far as what I believe spiritually, religiously, whatever else. I, in a sense, feel that I have had my third eye opened recently.
Ooh, good job.
Maybe not specifically, but something has tapped into the fact that I'm probably more superstitious than I've ever allowed myself to believe. And we've brought up my collection before that is sitting next to Sai and myself. And, what normal person collects this many totems unless they are preparing for a magical war?
You know what? You have a veritable army of defenders ready to go into battle at your beck and call, and that's pretty rad.
So it's like again, going back to my belief in the power of symbolism, is that everything here holds a symbolic significance to me.
So I know one of your latest additions to your collection is it's not even a trident; it's a petrodent, isn't it? It's got 5 points.
It's got 5 points, but Warner Brothers, DC, and the box that came with it says trident. So it's from the Justice League movie, so you can add that to the list of inaccuracies about the Justice League movie.
Oh yes,
they have a trident that has 5 points, but
gotta give CinemaSins something to do.
But I saw that at GameStop yesterday, and I'm like, yeah, I probably really shouldn't. So I get it, but of course, it's supposed to break down into 3 pieces and fit into a box. But whoever put it together to put it on the store display put it together so tightly that neither I nor the clerk could take it apart. So I am carrying a 6-foot trident whole on a bus with a cart of groceries.
And you are not the kind of person who necessarily wants to draw attention to herself on public transit.
I'm generally the type of person that doesn't like to draw attention to myself in general, but here I am, a fat transgender woman who probably maybe doesn't appear to be trans, but I have a cart of groceries and a 6-foot trident. The bus driver that comes by my apartment building, he's used to me being weird. So, and even he was like, when he saw the trident, and he's like, "You've got to be fucking." But he said so in a way that it's like he's used to me by now. He knows I'm weird, and he didn't go any further than that because he knew there wasn't a point going further than that.
But it's like it's a symbol of power.
Yes,
it's like if you can muster up the social courage to carry that thing home on the bus, then you could probably take on anything.
Well, that is the hope. That is the hope.
I'm proud of you for taking that step.
Daria, Queen of the Seas. So anyway, we were talking about R.E.M.
Yeah, we were talking about R.E.M. at some point. I'm not sure when we stopped. Or maybe we have been this entire time. So that was Hope. And the next song was At My Most Beautiful.
This was the song that I recognized when I heard this. It was like, oh, okay, I remember hearing it. I used to hear it at work when I worked at the bakery I worked at for 10 years. It was one of our store, how the stores have their piped in music or whatever. Well, I guess they connect to a satellite service and whatever else. So yeah, At My Most Beautiful was a song I'd hear probably 2-3 times a day at points.
Yeah, I've never heard it on the radio, but
well, it's not really radio. Yeah. It's your grocery store, non-threatening elevator music stuff.
I see what.
So I mean, this is why I know about Liam Finn. This is why I know about Peter Bjorn and whoever else. I can't remember the name. And that's why I know that Jennifer Knapp has done something other than Christian music.
I think that so what this song is it's a love song. And more than that, it's a love song that focuses on very, very simple things. I count your eyelashes secretly. With everyone whisper I love you. And that's like such a contemplative, it's like this expression of love that's very focused on the intimate details and the very, very small things. And it's not bombastic, it's not like hyperbolic, it's just very, very simple. And it's not at your most beautiful, it's at my most beautiful, which is like recognizing that we are at our best and are at our most beautiful when we are recognizing the beauty in others, is what I kind of got out of that. One of the things I got out of it. What do you think?
I feel like love songs in general tend to be really stupid.
Yeah, not when R.E.M. does.
Not when R.E.M. does it. Obviously, this is not a stupid love song, but most like the popular love songs are pretty dumb. I'm going to go ahead and go with the most egregious example I can give up is a Selena Gomez song called "I Love You Like a Love Song." Wow,
that's pretty recursive right there.
Yeah, like, okay, that was really deep and thoughtful and introspective and totally not written by Selena Gomez anyway, so it's not like I can blame her.
I'm reminded of, I think, the shortest poem I've ever written.
Mm-hmm.
No, wait, it's the second shortest poem I've ever written. And it goes, ours was a love like from out of a song, full of cliches and about 3 minutes long.
Yeah. And At My Most Beautiful is talking about something a lot deeper. And I think that something that does not get expressed very well in at least mainstream media. It's not always grand gestures or whatever else. That love can be a quiet moment between two people doing pretty much nothing.
Yeah, just appreciating one another, you know. And it's like the other thing was the refrain, I guess, or the chorus is, "I found a way to make you smile," and that's like it's taking pride, I think, in being able to give pleasure to someone else, and that's like that is if anything is love, it's that.
Yeah, if you're going to play a song at your wedding, if you're going to have a wedding song, don't go for Every Breath You Take. And maybe consider At My Most Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good one. But also like, so I'm gonna draw a connection between this and another song on the album, which is Falls to Climb, which is the last song. So this was At My Most Beautiful, and there's a line in Falls to Climb, which is, "My actions make me beautiful," which I wonder how much connection there is between those two songs. But we can get to that when we get to it. Now, I don't know much about music theory.
Okay.
But there has got to be some music theory explanation for why that ascending chord progression in that song, where it goes do 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 do. It is like one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard in a pop song.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure there is. Unfortunately, I don't know the term for it offhand because I never actually took a music theory class either.
That is a bit that really lives up to the album's title because it is up and up and up and it keeps going up and it just sounds perfect. It starts out sounding peppy and then the chords rise and rise and rise and it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. One of you will know.
If you know music theory and can explain this chord progression to us, please do so.
We have, I don't know how we're going to comment on Libsyn, but if you're listening to this on YouTube, we do have a comment section below. Mm-hmm. Please don't be evil.
Don't be evil.
In our comment section.
Only Daria is allowed to be evil. She's the supervillain. She has a monopoly on it.
Damn right.
So, The Apologist. Does this song remind you of anyone? It reminds me of a lot of people, honestly. So, The Apologist is it's about apologizing. It's about wanting to apologize for everything you are, which I relate to personally. The chorus goes, I'm sorry, so sorry, so sorry, so sorry, so sorry, on and on, until you're not sure you can apologize anymore, and then you apologize more. And yeah, I have gotten into those cycles before where I was like, no matter how many times I say sorry, I feel like I haven't apologized enough, and I just need to keep apologizing until people stop hating me. And really, I'm only imagining that they hate me in most cases anyway. Otherwise, they wouldn't have stuck around to hear me apologize 20 million times.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of insecurity.
Yes.
Usually, especially these days, you hear the word apologist, and there's that negative connotation to it. That it's somebody that's trying to excuse away the terrible things of something that is supposedly good, or you have rape apologists that try to justify rape or something. And so it's like when I first saw the title of this song, I was like, okay, where is this going to go? And then it just turns out to be about this sort of. This happens a lot with abuse victims. Is that you've been taught your entire life by your abuser that everything is your own fault.
Yeah.
That you are the one that is responsible for your own misery.
And everyone else's.
And everyone else's. So even once you escape that abusive thing, your thought pathways, your way of coping with the world, if you accidentally bump into someone, or and a friend asks you to make an order, get an order of a sandwich, and the sandwich comes back wrong, or whatever, minor thing that like most people will either, oh, sorry, and then just move on. The abuse victim will not move on because they are now under the belief that it wasn't just some minor annoyance, it was a friendship breaker.
And you have to figure out what you have to do to make it right.
And what you don't realize as an abuse victim is your relationships with people who are healthy are not that fragile.
Yeah. And you're more likely, I think, to make things worse by...
It's one of the easiest ways to drive people away.
And that probably accounts for most of the arguments I have with my girlfriend. I'm like, I do something that I'm pretty sure was a huge mistake. And she wants to move on from it, and I'm like, no, I need to figure out how to make this better. And it's like, it never needed to be fixed. Quite often it's like something like she asked me to do something and then realized that she could easily do it herself, and then I'm like, no, you're doing it yourself because I failed to do it. It's like, which I need to then make restitution for. It's a mind fuck, and I'm not into it.
Yeah, I think we both have a history of catastrophizing.
And so the next song is also a downer, and that is Sad Professor. So I have a lot of thoughts about Sad Professor. I'm still not sure, like, what I don't know what the intention was behind this song, but there's a lot of different things that I think about when I'm listening to it. It goes, everybody hates a bore, everybody hates a drunk, everyone hates a sad professor, I hate where I wound up. So I'm about to finish my bachelor's degree after many, many years, and so I am pretty immersed in the academic life. I'm planning to go to grad school, although that's still a few years in the future. And I know that there's a lot of sad professors out there, like literal professors who are sad, who hate where they wound up. And this has only gotten worse as tuition rates have gone up and the economy has gotten worse. That people have put so much work and so much money into an advanced degree, hoping that they would have a good job, and then finding that there's only jobs for adjuncts or part-time lecturers or no jobs at all. And then they have to like work to pay off their massive, massive student debts at jobs that are sometimes even worse paid than they would have without all this advanced degree, because people look at them and they're like, "Oh, you're overqualified."
Yeah.
And well, but there aren't enough jobs for the things that I am qualified for, so there's no choice.
Yeah, it's like you can't get a job in your field, but the McDonald's is hiring.
And meanwhile, if you do get a job teaching, like you're teaching like 18 to 22-year-olds who think they know everything because they've had a couple of economics classes and they are pretty sure that they know better than you in a lot of cases, and they're like, why do I have to listen to you drone on and on and on? I'm never going to use this in my career, because of course when you're 22 you know exactly what information you're going to use in your career 40 years from now. And I know a lot of grad students whose lives are really, it's not just about how much money it costs. It's about, like, how do you, like, it seems like the hardest job out there right now is grad student. And quite often that's not even a paying job. You're paying for the for the privilege of doing this job. And more than once I've had friends of mine complain day in day out about how grad school is killing them, and they're overworked and underpaid, and their students are entitled, and their job prospects are shit. And then they turn around to me and say, "You would probably enjoy grad school." I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, I might on some level, but wow.
I have never pursued a higher education. Part of it was based on just full on burnout after high school.
Yeah.
A lot of it's depression, and a big part of that is I grew up in debt. My mom has lost 2 houses in her life and about to lose a third because she used to work at the Lordstown plant. This was national news for a while. The GM plant in Lordstown is shut down, and it cost tens of thousands of jobs, including my mom's. So of course now she has a house that she can't afford. You know, when my mom divorced my stepdad, my mom, my youngest sibling, and I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment for almost 2 years on top of each other because none of us could afford to get anything better. And my mom's credit was so horrible that she needed to use me in order to get utilities or anything like that. So, of course, all the utilities are in my name. And, of course, my mom is broke and I can't get a job because I got to stay home and take care of my sibling. So bills are late. And so, of course, my credit sucks now.
Wow.
And so it's like I didn't need to go to college to have shitty credit. And I look at it now and it's like the people in my life that tell me I should have gone to school are my stepmom, who never went to school and doesn't seem to care whether or not I can afford it. My mom, who is one of my abusers and one of the people that has taught me that everything in my life is my fault. And my friends who are in school who are all broke as hell, in debt out their ass, and working Joe jobs, if that, to live in really crappy apartments, if that. Half of them are still living with parents or with other family. So I'm looking at all these people saying, you know, you should go to college. And of course, you did, and you're miserable, or you didn't, and you think I'm not going to be and it's not that I don't want to. I do think at a point I probably will, but I don't know if I can afford it.
Yeah, I personally, it was worth it for me, but I got so many lucky breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are mixed blessings. Like sometimes you get money out of tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've had so many lucky breaks, and I still ended up with a ton of debt. I don't even want to look at how much debt I'm in right now.
And the thing is debt causes depression.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's these, think pieces and articles that come out all the time saying that our generation is the most depressed generation on record.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason.
There's lots of reasons.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that. The planet is dying. The economy sucks. We're all drowning in debt. No one has any money. And the only people that do have money only seem to care about themselves, and they don't care if the world burns.
And don't forget smartphones.
Oh, yes, because smartphones and connections to the internet, which, of course, reminds us that we are in an apocalyptic hellscape. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's the problem. But access to information.
But also connects us to other human beings when we're not able to leave our own homes. But anyway, this is a tangent, and there's absolutely no way this could have been intentional because it was written decades before. But Sad Professor reminded me of one particular person who was sort of trending for 15 minutes several months ago, and that is Paul Bullen, who is best known as the guy who tried to mansplain the word vulva to a gynecologist.
Okay, it's like I didn't recognize the name, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
Anyway, the story was some dumbass, some magazine or other had a article with the word vulva in the title. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was like a photo project of women's vulvas.
Yes, and this guy, Paul Bullen, he decided he would be like, excuse me, actually, the correct term is vagina. He didn't say it exactly that way.
He might as well have.
But it came off that way, and
tipping his fedora and all.
Yeah, and
on 4chan.
He's too old for 4chan. I looked into it, but people ripped into him because he's a dumbass. But also, days later, he comes out with this 40-plus page, single-spaced.
I did not read the 40-page one. I just remember the tweets.
I didn't read all of it, but I read some of it.
I believe I read the rebuttal.
Basically explaining why he's right and everyone else is wrong. He had this whole spiel about how whenever he hears the word mansplain, he knows he's dealing with an inferior intellectual or something to that effect.
Which is not an original thought whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So please, men, stop doing that, because damn well you're just trying to shut down a conversation.
It's yet another example of how dare you use language in different ways than the ways that I'm used to. It's no, language should have stopped evolving as soon as I got my PhD, which he does have a PhD in political science.
Oh,
from decades ago. So here's the thing. This guy has a website. It's paulbullen.com, I think.
Oh, man.
paul.bullen.com. Excuse me. And on this, he basically has everything he's ever done. It's mostly writing. He manages a couple of mailing lists on subjects like Aristotle. That's the guy. But he also has his entire resume.
Okay.
So a guy who manages his own website that is basically his name.com and has his entire resume on that website is someone who is probably really just hoping against hope that someone will come to him and offer him a good job, because he's been looking for one for a long time and he's just tired of applying. And yes, I have been there. I understand your pain. I just
are pretty typical sad professor.
Yeah, and he got a PhD in the 90s.
Back when you could afford to do that.
In political science. He was apparently a lecturer and an adjunct for a few years. Jumped from teaching job to teaching job, and then had to go back and get a certificate in editing, so that he could get a job that actually pays a living wage. I suppose. So it's this is someone who tried to be a professor and he failed, and now he's trying to teach the world how words work.
Oh.
And of course, it's not working because he's just. And when I listen to the song "Sad Professor," I just picture him in his home office, tapping away at his probably Windows XP computer, trying so hard to make the world stop being wrong.
Oh, yes, our good old URL bad man. Hi, Lily Allen fans. I shouted y'all out.
So, yeah. I wanted to bring him up before we move on to the next song.
Oh, and since we had brought up the Volvo Picture Project, I did take a look at it, and I thought it was very interesting that they were showing both cisgender and transgender women.
That's interesting. I might have to look into that.
Yeah, because I don't remember if I saw the whole thing. I know I saw a sampling of it, and there was at least one post-op trans woman. At least it's claimed to be,
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought it was interesting that they were inclusive of that, because obviously
it's a contentious subject of debate these days.
Yes.
Okay. So the next song was "In the Air." You're in the air, which you mentioned as one of the ones that stuck out to you.
Yeah.
Can you tell me why?
Well, in my time of listening to R.E.M., there are a few R.E.M. songs that I feel like encompass what the band is. Like, if I'm going to introduce R.E.M. to someone who has never heard of them, what do I play for them? And the songs I usually bring up are either Cuyahoga, Night Swimming, or Strange Currencies.
That's a good pick. I really like Cuyahoga because, yay, reference to a Cleveland landmark, but I'm also kind of annoyed that they mispronounce it. Which, yeah, okay, no one outside of Cuyahoga County, or possibly Stark County, knows how to pronounce Cuyahoga. It's Cuyahoga, not Cuyahoga.
Well, the other thing about it is the Unplugged performance. When they did Unplugged 2.0, they actually said it properly.
Yeah. So maybe someone corrected them.
Yeah, someone had gotten to them.
Someone tweeted at them. Actually.
But so it's like, to my knowledge, it has been addressed. Yes. But
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I know Twitter didn't exist back then. Shut up. But don't at me.
There's nowhere to at you anyway. You'd have to at podcast false, and Daria is the one that runs that, so you're gonna have to yell at me.
Yeah, don't yell at Daria. She didn't do anything wrong.
I will block your ass.
Not that you know of.
Yeah. And yes, I did appreciate. It's like, okay, it's a song about our burning river, and sort of harkening back to a simple time, even probably before white people showed up. Although it's kind of odd hearing white people talk about how things were better before we showed up.
I mean, they kind of were.
Our thing is that there is no kinda. There was a
our thing as white people. Our thing is we move into a place and then fuck it up. That's I can't think of any example where that was not the case.
There was a 20-some-odd minute video we discussed about 2 weeks ago that pretty much said that.
Yeah.
Several times.
Yeah. And I know we're not the only race on Earth that does that, but we definitely do more of it than most.
Well, we've made a reputation of it. Yeah. But so there's Cuyahoga, there's Night Swimming, which is, just skinny dipping.
It's a sweet romantic song about skinny dipping.
And then Strange Currencies to me just sounds like a quintessential R.E.M. song.
I don't know if I would call it quintessentially R.E.M., but it is one of my favorites on the Monster album.
Yeah. So I'm hearing "You're in the Air," and that's one thing is, oh, cool. This is like one of those songs I can show people, saying, hey, this is R.E.M. But I'm getting that's not a shared opinion.
Well, it's more like I can't quite grasp it yet. It's like, and that might be the point, because it's like there's something about the song that's very like ethereal and like it's really disorienting, and like I wonder if like in terms of R.E.M. songs, it's kind of the polar opposite of Stand, because Stand was all about orienting yourself very solidly in space and time, and this is about disorienting yourself. I'm what you found. I'm upside down. You're in the air. the grammar is all over the place. Bright in the stars, weather is lifting the heavens. Love a love like this. It's pulling you higher. Twist it, turn it this around. It's very, very like head over heels. It's very, you don't know which way is up. You don't know which way is down. It's just confusion, and it's kind of reflected in the melody because it goes up and down very, very fluidly, and like it's more like my brain doesn't quite know what to do with it yet. So I don't dislike it. I think I actually like it quite a bit. I just don't know necessarily what to think of it. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So then the next one is Walk Unafraid, which is fitting. It's basically a queer anthem as far as I can tell.
Yes, we are recording this in June of 2019.
Yeah.
First week of June.
Pride Month.
So you will probably be hearing this by the end of June.
Yeah.
It'll still be Pride Month.
Yeah. This is a slightly lesser known fact that I was on social media talking about, and that is Michael Stipe is queer. He identifies as queer. He's had relationships with men and women. I think he also, like, I don't know what he identifies as gender-wise, but he has said things in interviews that I think imply that he would subscribe to a more fluid concept of gender. He definitely understands the queer perspective, and a lot of the songs kind of speak to that. And Walk Unafraid really exemplifies that to me. And I want to read some of these lyrics. Say, keep within the boundaries if you want to play. Say, contradiction only makes it harder. How can I be what I want to be when all I want to do is strip away these still constraints and crush this charade, shred this sad masquerade? I don't need no persuading. I'll trip, fall, pick myself up, and walk unafraid. And that is amazing to me. That's like, I just listened to that and I'm like, the melody just it starts out kind of slow and cautious, and then as the chorus picks up, it gets more confident, and it just makes me feel like almost talking yourself into being who you want to be.
Yeah,
and also like embracing the burden, because it's like another verse says, "If I have a bag of rocks to carry as I go, I just want to hold my head up high. I don't care what I have to step over. I'm prepared to look you in the eye." Look me in the eye. And if you see familiarity, then celebrate the contradiction. Help me when I fall to walk unafraid. And so there's that reaching out and that like search for familiarity and companionship. Absolutely, as far as I can tell, an absolutely perfect song.
Yeah, if there's any one song I'm going to take away from this experience, it's going to be Walk Unafraid.
Listen to it. All you queers out there, listen to it. Put it on repeat. Whenever the heteronormative, cisnormative system got you down, add this to your playlist. I know you've got one. We've all got one.
Our queer pride playlist. Yeah.
So
why not smile?
Why not smile? Now I'm curious whether this song comes off to you as disingenuous or sincere, because it's about encouraging someone to smile when they've been sad.
I feel like the good thing about R.E.M. is that they will leave things to your own translation. So I can see it going either way. But I think with the context of the album and the ongoing theme of sort of finding the positivity in the mundane, I think that it's meant to be more sincere.
Yeah.
But because this is R.E.M. and because there are no simple answers, I feel like it could be taken either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that it has the line, "You've been so sad it makes me worry," which is like definitely an expression of concern rather than like judgment. It's not you should smile more. It's, hey, why not smile? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Let's get through this, you know?
Yeah, it does take on a less than favorable connotation given the context of which maybe this is new to you, but men have a tendency to just demand women smile at them because they feel entitled to it somehow.
Yeah.
And the reason why there's a cultural backlash to women being told to smile is because we're not here to look pretty.
And also, like, if you're demanding that someone smile without showing any concern for how they feel,
yeah,
you're basically
being a dick.
There's many different kinds of emotional labor, and if you don't know what emotional labor is, look it up. We're not going to define everything for you.
We will probably discuss it in full later.
But one form of emotional labor is expressing feelings you don't feel, or suppressing your expression of feelings you do feel. And smiling when you don't feel like smiling, it takes work.
Oh yeah.
It's like people say, oh, it takes like fewer muscles to smile than to frown, but it's like, but activating those muscles will take mental energy that you could have been using to actually think about how to solve your problems or get through the day, or like otherwise like take care of your own needs rather than the needs of the wants really of the people around you who would prefer not to see someone frown.
Well, I also feel that we have this societal expectation that a resting face is a frown. It's not.
I've had like I have what's called a resting bitch face, and that's like, and I've had that since I was a little kid. I remember in elementary school, being like, apparently when my face was relaxed, would just look so sad, and people would stop me in the hall and say, "What's wrong?" And I'd be like, "Nothing." It's like you look so sad. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know that, but like,
yeah.
But that has persisted throughout my life, and at times I've been made to feel ashamed of that. It's like, why can't I just like look happy and keep people from like being concerned about that? It turns out that how I look doesn't actually appreciably affect other people's lives, so they maybe should like step off a little bit.
A lot of it.
And that's something that's taken me many years to come to terms with. I'm not immediately being like fuck you to everybody who like is concerned about my feelings. It's just that I'm taking a little bit less responsibility for how people feel. Again, with the apologist compulsively apologizing for things.
And it's like, I've asked you on and off, like, hey, if you're okay.
Yeah.
I do so because I'm trying to check in.
Yeah.
Because I'm not always aware of how people are doing. And really, it's more of just a, it's just a check-in. Hey, it's not necessarily it's not necessarily something I feel that I'm doing because I feel that you're sad. It's that I'm just checking in and make sure, whatever.
And yeah, to the listeners, yeah, sometimes Daria will stop and ask me if I'm okay, and I think I usually edit that out. Because it's not something you necessarily have to hear, but yeah, it happens once in a while, and I think, especially since we deal with a lot of really dark subjects, like last episode we spent a lot of time talking about suicide. So,
2.5 hours.
Yeah. So yeah, we deal with some rough subjects, and yeah, I appreciate stopping and checking in.
Yeah. And you don't get to hear a lot of the awkward pauses either. Yes. And that's when we're both just kind of like, just checking to make sure where we are.
Yeah. Where was it? What were we talking about again? How far was that tangent?
Oh, God. So speaking of tangents, I believe we're on one.
A little bit. So the next one is Day Sleeper. I love Day Sleeper. It's like, Day Sleeper is such a lighthearted, pleasurable sounding song about being a alienated night shift worker who is completely like cut off from the rest of society because he sleeps during the day. But it sounds so, it's one of the prettiest sounding songs on the album, I think. And it really feels to me like, I don't know if I could have appreciated this song until after I like worked in like really menial jobs for a while, and not that I ever did the night shift. I think the latest I've ever worked was until 11. But any job that like where you have maybe an irregular schedule or you work evenings so you can't go to evening social events, like it cuts you off and you end up spending a whole lot more time alone. I don't know. I felt that.
I was a day sleeper
Yeah.
for several years. After the bakery gig fell out, the mom and pop shop stopped, sold the store and went out of business. I worked at a Circle K, where my anxiety and my issues was killing me doing the job. So I volunteered for the midnight shift, which on one hand made it possible but for me to continue to do my job because I wasn't under so much stress that, I would lash out against the customers because, hi, customers of the world, you're generally assholes and you need to knock it off.
And even if you're not an asshole, it's possible that the last person who came in before you was an asshole, and the cashier or salesperson might still be recovering from that. So please be gentle.
Yes, and do keep in mind that when I was working this job, there would be the morning coffee rush, which would be the busy time. Okay, I had daily panic attacks. And I was having those panic attacks during that part of my shift. People were witnessing me having a panic attack and forcing myself to work through it and went about their day.
Yeah, that has happened to me too.
Yes.
Yeah, I just like staying here and like I've had like times where I was like I couldn't close the place, so I had to just like literally huddle behind the counter and like cry as quietly as I could, and then as soon as I heard someone come in, be like, "Oh, gotta pop back up and pretend that everything's fine."
And, see, and my panic attacks are sort of implosions, and like sort of my diaphragm is crashing in on itself. So I'm going through this excruciating physical pain. And I don't drive, and I'm in the middle of nowhere. This is Vienna, Ohio. If you're ever in Vienna, Ohio, there is one streetlight, and and downtown is a Dollar General, two bars, or actually say a bar, a VFW, and a Circle K, and then it's farmland in all four directions. No public transportation whatsoever. So I fortunately live a few blocks from this downtown area.
If you can call it a downtown.
But for Vienna it was. And I don't drive because I have anxiety issues and long, complicated, not really worth going into, but Daria has issues.
Not everyone drives.
Yeah. So, and I need to have a job. So I'm working at this job and I'm making myself miserable, and I'm volunteering for the night shift because it is literally the only shift where I feel like I could have maintained my sanity. And I'm deeply depressed. I'm deeply in the closet at this point. I knew I was trans but didn't know what to do about it. I had no connections to the outside world. I tried to sleep as much as I possibly could. So it wasn't just day sleeping, it was like 16-hour attempt to sleep. So it's like my entire day was recover from work, go to work, recover from work, go to work. And I would get these stretches of days off, like 2 or 3 days at a time. I wouldn't sleep at all because I had no life.
Yeah.
And it's part of what drove me to the 2016 suicide attempts, was just that extreme. So like for me, day sleeper hit a nerve.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't want to go back to this. So I appreciate R.E.M, but I think I'm gonna.
It's a good song, I think, but yeah, it fills with some heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's nothing personal against the song. It's just my own experiences.
So the next one is called Diminished. And yeah, that's a complicated song right there. I am still working through what I think it means or what I think about it.
To me it sounds like a relationship that is falling apart, and not in the convenient and simple way, in the messy and complicated and nobody gets out of this alive kind of way. Then there's the follow up sort of hidden track where Michael Stipe is saying that I'm not over you.
Yeah.
So I feel like these two songs are considered part of the same track. So I feel like that it's important. That's like you have this diminished is sort of the main event, so to speak, the cataclysm of this relationship ending, and then I'm still not over you is sort of the coda, the epilogue, the looking at the ruins afterwards and just being like I know this ended badly, but I'm still not over you.
And what really strikes me about Diminished is the motif of the like courtroom imagery. It seems to be about, like you said, a relationship ending, but it's full of these, I guess, metaphors where it's the image of a courtroom and the jury and the judge. And that first comes up in How Do I Play This? Jealous lover, self defense, protective brother, chemical dependence. I'll consult the I Ching. I'll consult the TV. Ouija, oblique strategies. I'll consult the law books for precedents. Can I charm the jury? It seems like he's trying to work through this problem and framing it in terms of how do I present my case to some sort of imaginary courtroom.
To me, it kind of came off like I have tried every possible solution I could throw at this. I have thrown all of my resources, all of my ideas. I am Hail Mary at this point with this. Yeah. And I don't know what else to do. And I don't think that these two takes are very dissimilar. I think they're two sides of the same coin.
I just find it really interesting, like the list of things that he talks about consulting. I Ching, which is an ancient divination technique from China. TV, which
obviously
seen people try to use the TV as like a form of divination almost. So it's like you turn to a random channel and see what's on, and like.
Okay, that's different.
It's different. But I think it's sometimes it happens in like television where on TV someone will be watching the TV and it will be about something that they were thinking about, and it's like, oh, that's a sign, you know?
Yeah, see, that's called narrative convenience.
Yes, but I've also heard of people using that like intentionally in real life. I might be wrong. I don't know. But then Ouija, which is one of the most out of left field, like
it is the attempt to directly connect to the hereafter.
Yeah.
And that in explaining that kind of really goes to your belief structure. So I will lay off of that.
Yeah, I personally think that like Ouija is just way too easy to like subconsciously or consciously like manipulate. So I'll never touch it myself.
Right.
And oblique strategies, which have you heard of them? So oblique strategies was invented by Brian Eno.
Okay.
And it's a deck of cards, or you could also there's also a web version of it where you can like draw a card by clicking a button, and it will give you a very vague bit of advice for how to like deal with some creative situation. And I've used them from time to time, and it's kind of an interesting like late 20th century divination technique.
Okay, you said these were oblique strategies?
Yeah.
For future reference. Cool. Okay.
All right. It's such an introspective song, and that's like a lot of R.E.M. is very introspective songs. It's about like turning your eye inward and going like deep down into your own personal like associations, and it's very opaque. That's something that I think of in my head when I'm thinking about like the difference between poetry and prose, is that poetry is opaque and prose is transparent. Ideally, when you're writing prose, your meaning should be more evident than the words you use to describe them, whereas with poetry, the words should be more evident than the meaning. At least that's how I uh, define them, and I am not an authority, so don't trust me.
Now, I think when it comes to REM and their songs, they come from a very, very specifically personal place. So we as the audience get to kind of take what we can from them, but ultimately what they're really about is only in the heads of the people that wrote them.
Yeah.
But I think that's the way most art goes.
I don't know if we have had a conversation yet about the death of the author.
No.
But yeah,
I'm somewhat unfamiliar with this concept.
Yeah, but it's basically the concept that when you're interpreting a work, the intentions that or the meanings that the author had in mind go out the window, and you just look at the piece of work on its own. And the author is effectively, like, for all intents and purposes, dead in terms of how you can interpret this piece of work.
All right.
Although I prefer the way that John Green put it, and that is, books belong to their readers. I'm not sure how much I like personally adhere to that as a concept, but yeah, it is something I like to remind myself that like I try not to think too much about intention. Mm-hmm. I'll be like, yeah, this is how I like to see it. Yeah. So the next one is parakeet, and that's another one that I haven't really figured out what it means yet.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I mean, it was kind of there. In fact, the note I have is that it sort of reminds me of Tongue from Monster in the sense that it feels like this doesn't really fit with the rest of the record. But but then again, with Tongue, it was in between Strange Currencies and Bang and Blame, and I feel like you needed a reset button between those two songs.
Maybe.
So maybe Parakeet is sort of the, hey, we just gave you this really depressing, down, introspective song about a cataclysm, essentially. Mm-hmm. So we need to set you up for false decline.
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was what it was. But I also wouldn't be surprised if later on I might be listening to this song and realize, oh, this totally makes sense if I look at it this way. Mm-hmm. So I'll just leave it for that future time. And that brings us to False Decline, which it's definitely rising for me in terms of like how much I appreciate it. I'm almost starting to like False Decline as much as Walk Unafraid. Mm-hmm. In fact, one of the notes that I have is, what if False Decline is kind of a sequel to or an answer to Walk Unafraid? Mm-hmm. And if you want, I can explain why I think that might be so. So, if Walk Unafraid is about like making this decision to like be yourself and throw off the shackles of expectation and just like embrace your burden and try to face it with pride. And False Decline is like sort of like later into that process. It seems to be about a person who's sort of been made a scapegoat or a martyr. And for a song that sounds really optimistic, I think, in terms of like the music, it's got really, really dark imagery. It's got who cast the final stone? Who threw the crushing blow? Someone has to take the fall. Why not me? And later on it goes, gentlemen, mark your opponents, fire into your own ranks. Pick the weakest as strategic move, square off to meet your enemy. For each and every gathering, a scapegoat falls to climb. As I step forward silently, deliberately mine. and it ends with "I am free." And I think that that's like when you find yourself in this situation where we live in this really self-destructive society where we really are firing into our own ranks. Like, nobody really knows who the enemy is, so they're just shooting their friends. And someone's got to take the blame. Someone's got to take the fall. It may as well be a willing volunteer. And that's why I kind of feel like it's the necessary conclusion to Walk Unafraid. Because this is the only person who would like willingly volunteer to take that fall. Is someone who's made the decision not to be a willing participant in this.
I guess in a way it's easy to compare this to the ending of The Dark Knight. Okay, to set this up for people, the three of you that didn't see The Dark Knight. Okay, so the movie is ending with Jim Gordon, Harvey Dent, who is now in his Two-Face persona, and Batman. And somebody's going to take the heat for Harvey Dent's murders. But we can't have Harvey Dent do it because he is Gotham's White Knight. He was the district attorney that was fighting corruption in Gotham City. So if we tear this hero down, Gotham will just blow apart. And in The Dark Knight Rises, that's exactly what happens. Harvey Dent is discredited and everything blows apart. So Harvey Dent shoots himself. He's dead. And Gordon and Batman...
Spoilers!
This movie came out over a decade ago.
Oh, shit. Now I feel old.
So Gordon and Batman are like, okay, well, what the fuck do we do now? We can't. I mean, if Harvey is exposed for his crimes, everything we've worked for will fall apart. The Joker will have won. And Batman's like, no, blame it on me. I did it. And the last lines of the movie are Gordon talking to his son about why he has to hunt the Batman now. And it goes back to a line that was earlier in the movie that was said by Harvey Dent, is that you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I kind of feel like that's where Falls to Climb might fit.
I don't. I mean, I could see that. That makes sense. But I'm feeling more like that this is a sort of something that transcends the hero-villain dichotomy. I feel like...
Sort of like, in order to be my most true free self, I have to give up maybe the opinions of others.
I think that, that's more like and I'm going back to the line I pointed out earlier, and that is, my actions make me beautiful and dignify the flesh. And that's when it goes straight into I am free. The idea that he's describing himself as beautiful and as free, not necessarily as good or evil, is like, this good and evil, this martyr, villain, hero, these are all your words. These are all words that the people use who don't really understand what's going on.
Right.
Whereas someone who's an artist or is a poet or someone who's merely wanting to find whatever beauty he can wherever he can find it is going to be focused on entirely other sets of criteria. So it's kind of like a chaotic, neutral kind of attitude. It's more like, what if Harvey Dent had been blamed for his own actions, but people didn't think that makes him bad, that makes everything he did like tainted. That's just another thing that this person did, some of which are good, some of which are evil, and it doesn't necessarily, those things don't necessarily have to fit into a coherent persona. You don't have to lock people into these identity-based categories. So
this is what we can get out of, very small things otherwise.
yeah,
The complicated puzzles of things.
yeah. I'm really glad that this conversation got that deep because wow, that's more than I think I could have thought of on my own.
Mm-hmm. I guess that we've covered the whole album. Things I take away from this that OK Computer was definitely fresh on their mind as this was being put together, but they clearly knew that they couldn't do OK Computer.
Like you can't do OK Computer again.
It's like it's like this is not what we do, and Radiohead had to go so far left to do that it wasn't even funny anyway, and they only went further left after that with the Kid A and Amnesiac, but it's like R.E.M had this sort of, I think they had this very fresh influence, and in a way I kind of feel like this was maybe it was meant to be a concept album.
Could have been.
But there doesn't seem to be a very set narrative so much as there are setups to endings. Like the album is split up in upside and downside, or at least it was for vinyl and cassette release, because they still had cassettes back then.
Mm.
So the first 8 tracks are considered the upside, and then everything from Walk On Afraid down to Falls to Climb are considered the downside. So I feel like the upside is setting up this character. This is like their life normal. This is like, and then they come to that turning point. It's time for me to walk unafraid of being who I truly am, and everything kind of goes downhill. Because you go back to saying something like Sad Professor, the depression was there, the internal hollowness was there, and he knew that, or I would say the protagonist knew that changes need to be made. It's time to live my truth, and unfortunately for this, living your truth is not as simple as narrative convenience would want them to be. And I think in the end, I think Falls to Climb is, you know what, I wouldn't have done it differently either way. This was the way it was supposed to go, even if it was very difficult for me.
Yeah, I think I accept that interpretation. It's not necessarily the only one we'll come across in our journey, but I think it works for now. That's been a good episode, I think.
Yeah, I think that was good.
Yeah. So again, this is False Dichotomies. I'm Cy Castells.
I'm Daria Quinn, and thank you for spending your time with us.